Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez, and you are listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast.
I appreciate that. We got this. We're actually having you on the Iron Culture podcast, and we're just thrilled to have 4 bodybuilders on at once.
Omar, hold on, guys. I think instead we'll just call this episode the 3D Iron Muscle podcast journey culture. Like the most obvious combination of the two names. It makes sense. And
it's easiest to pronounce and talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So we, and I speak for everyone when I say we, is happy to have us on the 3D Iron Culture cast journey. And today we're going to be talking about bodybuilding.
What would the equivalent crossover of these two podcasts be? When Harry Met Sally is kind of Iron Culture, and then 3DMJ is maybe the Avengers. Like, what's the crossover here? It's like when Harry met the Avengers. Like, what is the movie equivalent of this crossover for you guys?
Well, Jeff's the Godfather.
So it's the Godfather crossing over with like
Karate Kid
of Mice and Men.
Of Mice and Men. Okay,
you're Lenny.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to kill the bad person, then get smoked by my brother Eric.
Mm-hmm.
It was you, but is it his brother actually? I read the novel a long time ago, or did he just start looking after Lenny? What is that relationship?
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I think it might be different in the movie. All I know is just check out.
You just want to kill me.
I shoot from back of the head. Yeah, that's all it is.
Hey, I am thrilled because I have 4 bodybuilders now on Iron Culture, and I noticed I have a question for you guys, and that is 3DMJ a cult? Because I noticed each and every one of you have the exact same photo of you 5 in the background. In fact, I see there's different attempts at flexing, and I'm just going to let you guys know if you're listening via audio only. Eric, of course, has to show his degrees. That's how he's flexing. So he has his degrees in the background of his video. Brad Loomis, on the other hand, has a sword, which is badass, I assume, from competing. Articles maybe that he wrote. So he's going, once again, the academic route. Jeff, just no academics. He's like, I got the trophies. I've been winning. So he has the trophies in the background, plus the casting couch in the back. And then Andrea's like, I'm so much more than just a bodybuilder. I'm actually an artiste. And I see the paintings and the art and the geography and everything. So it's a little bit of each of you.
That's Stranger Things right there. That's a Stranger Things
poster.
Yeah,
great show.
It is a great show.
I still don't know my continents barely. And then these
cult?
What? Cult? Yes. In short, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, before we begin, can I just say I'm thrilled to have you guys on because 3DMJ is the OG crew. You basically made, from an outsider's perspective, someone who's never competed in natural bodybuilding, someone who I would say maybe gravitates slightly more to the strength aspect of lifting culture. From my perspective, you guys were instrumental for introducing the masses to a lot of different concepts, to flexible dieting, to strength being important for natural lifters, and even the fact that a natural lifter can compete in some sort of bodybuilding show that you did not have to go the enhanced route. So you guys have been hugely influential. I've already shared this story before. Jeff, you probably saw me backstage there, but I was at Eric's show in 2011. A lot of people don't know this. It was in Nevada. We were there, right? Eric was. So I was there when he did that side chest. I was the guy that said "woo" like that. That was dead silent. Number 22, Coach?
Nope.
Okay. Nevada 2011 is a long time ago, but big fan for a long time, guys. Still to have you on.
That's nice.
I thought I remember seeing you back there.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I was definitely there. Yeah, Brad, I don't know if you remember me, but
my memory's bad.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all there to support each other.
The best part was the trench coat you were wearing. That was a little awkward, but
and the fact that nothing was on underneath it. And look, we don't have to go into specifics. We're here to enrich everyone's lives. Coach, I'm gonna let you do the intros because you kick ass and take names. I did a shitty take on 3DMJ.
It was
Break
great.
it down.
We need to acknowledge Bert though.
We will. Alberto Nunez is the one member of 3DMJ who can't make it today, but he's out doing the work of the Iron Pantheon for us. He is actually at a public school we're attempting to set up a powerlifting program. So he's working for the kids, for the people, and that's why we forgive him for not making it today, but that's all right. But so we've got my lovely colleagues. We've got Jeff Alberts, the godfather himself, the guy who started the blog 3D Muscle Journey before it was Team 3DMJ. Been competing since the 90s, and he's been on stage more times than I can count, and he's learned a lot. Fantastic coach. I've learned a lot from him. We've got Andrea Valdez, the Chief Operations Officer of 3D Muscle Journey. She's a kick-ass competitor in many different sports, from gymnastics as a young one to doing powerlifting and not really feeling it, to trying out grid, which didn't keep going, to now doing a little bit of CrossFit.
Well, I did bodybuilding.
And yeah,
for
lots
a
of
few
figure
years.
competitions.
Yeah, in the middle there
absolutely.
somewhere.
Absolutely. So also an experienced coach, and the heart and the soul and the lube that allows our gears to keep turning for 3D Muscle.
Gears, that's where we're going. Gears.
Well, what did you guys think? What did you guys think
The
on
only
that?
thing I would ever need that for.
Gears. You allow your gears to turn.
Yeah,
Okay.
gears it is. Yeah.
How dare you all? And then, of course, my man Brad Loomis, WNBF Pro, PNBA Pro holder of my heart, and an essential element of the team. Also, longtime competitor and coach, and and everybody knows who I am. So happy to have you all on our Together cast.
Yes.
Thank you for having us, guys.
Oh, like I said, when I
also want to welcome Omar Isuf to our podcast at the same time. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, but he has
right.
Yeah, he's the guy backstage.
His other way.
Yeah. Trench coat. Just call me Trench Coat Jim.
Yeah, he has a moderately successful YouTube channel compared to Jeff Nippard, and I think that's about it.
That's all we need to talk about. See, Coach tries to keep me humble, the ego in check, but he knows that it's this beast. If you've ever read Dune, Frank Herbert, fantastic book, I'm a twisted mentat. So today, I think it'd be interested. Only 2 people get that reference, and it's fine. I was looking over at Brad because I'm like, I feel like Brad might know that reference to Dune, but he gave me blank stares. It's cool.
That was a movie, right?
It was.
Don't make fun
it
of me.
was.
No, I just knew you hadn't read the book, so I thought you might have seen the movie, and I was right, and I just felt good about myself.
That's good.
Yeah. David Lynch, honestly, very tough book to adapt, but today, to get on with what we want to talk about, a lot of people love to lift. They enjoy exercising. They consider it a part of their own personal journey. But sometimes there's a really good video by a YouTube channel actually called Zach Talender, called The Arnold Effect, where people can't understand. They think they know what it's like to go on a journey, so that a certain level of proficiency when they've been lifting a few years, but then they don't know what it actually is like to compete. So you might lift for several years, right? You might have a 315 bench, you might squat 405, you have accomplishments, and you've put in the time in the gym, but then you try and extrapolate it out to those that actually do compete and go along with that process, which is a whole other animal, and they think they can understand, but as I'm about to learn, and I could see by the rate with which Coach Eric is blinking that his knee is already down. Like, I could see the differences, but it's clearly different for a bodybuilder to prep to get into that mindset and to, quite frankly, go to that next level, where for a lot of people it might be a casual hobby, an interest, but to really be passionate about something, that takes more out of you. And so I think this will be illuminating for all casual lifters, or maybe lifting enthusiasts like myself, who might think they know a little bit about it, but they don't really. So we're calling this, what is it, Eric? We're calling this code name this episode. Is it War Story?
Yeah, bodybuilding war stories.
Yeah. And so each of you have competed, collectively probably the 4 of you here have competed, probably 25 times, 30 times?
I did that by myself.
I think Jeff and I have alone probably amassed about 40, 50 shows.
Yeah, that's insane. But we want that inside perspective of what it's really like. Kind of, they do Inside the Actor Studio, or maybe one that Eric would be aware of, After Porn Ends. There's a Netflix documentary where they talk about
He's on it.
Look, Everyone needs a good fluffer, and they need to be the most reliable. Actually, that's what a lot of people don't know. So what I was going to say is, I want you guys to share your insights, the war stories of being a bodybuilder, and what that is actually like in a way that maybe our listeners would be able to better understand that process.
And also, what's cool is we have a lot of coaching experience too, so we can even step outside of our own personal experiences. And of course, like de-identify people and talk about some of the things we've seen coaching the hundreds of people we've helped get to stage. But yeah, and you can learn why after this episode you'll probably never want to compete.
Well, Eric, to digress for one quick second, you're actually right now, you compete, is it April 6th on Saturday?
You got it. I am a week and a half out, basically.
Yeah. So how are you feeling right now? You're a week and a half out.
So I am on my 7th consecutive low day because Berto is, I think that's why he's hiding from me, why I didn't show up today. We've been doing auto-regulated low days, meaning I push low days until we see new detail, and once we think and then maybe even further to get even more new detail and new lows, so long as it's not starting to negatively affect anything, like I'm getting like grossly flat or performance goes down or I start, killing people or something like that. Or wishing I could kill people, but I'm too lethargic to do so, so I'm just mean, which is probably more likely at this stage. And I'm feeling like the worst I have during this prep, but I'm still remarkably happy about how I feel compared to previous preps. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually pushing around 1,400 to 1,500 calories on these low days just because I'm a desk jockey. And I hit a new low of 81.4 kilos this morning, and I do have fully striated glutes at this stage. And I've got one more series of lows before we backload into this first show. So I think I'll be on point. And that's what I'm mostly motivated by right now. When you get this close, things just feel easier because you just don't care. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You really just want to be ready when you're on stage. And I feel like I'm there. So kind of the anxiety is gone. And now it's just like, all right, I get to eat tomorrow. I feel like poop today, but hey, it's all good. And don't worry, folks. I had a vanilla, no sugar Coke before this podcast started, so I'm ready to go with those 30 milligrams of caffeine.
I am so excited. Can I ask you guys, because Eric, you've said that before, but I make that joke. It's like we ain't stepping on stage until those striated glutes come in. But why is that? I've heard you say that, and also Berto when he was here in Toronto. Why is that the sign? It's a sign of overall your body fat percentage, conditioning. What is it about that being the cue versus I don't know what any other cue would be? Why is that the cue?
It's just where we've landed with the modern conditioning standard in the bodybuilding division. There are some times where that's not the last thing to come in on an individual, but for I would say 9.5 out of 10 men, especially, the last thing to come in is the glutes. This is kind of different for me because my glutes actually came in 2009 as an example before the last bits of my quads, but now it's gone back the other way. My quads came in much more clear. I think it's just because I was beating myself up with too much cardio and it's just water retention and edema. But there is separation and detail to some degree everywhere except for having the striations and the glutes. And you still get more detail everywhere else. Like while the glutes are coming in, it's not like nothing else comes off. It's just at that point, you don't have any, like once someone has striated glutes, you look at them and there's no real visible body fat. And then you see you can get even tighter and you're like, oh, Brian Whitaker, like apparently you can even get skinless or the appearance of. Women and some men are a little different. I've had competitors who their glutes come in before a few other things, but for the most part, by the time you have striations in your glutes, you're ready everywhere or close to it.
And just to piggyback onto that, Omar, in 2003, when I did my very, very, very first bodybuilding show, I was the only amateur that had striated glutes. There was one pro there, and he was the only other competitor, and my glutes were more striated than his. So that's just kind of goes to show you where the sport has gone.
Now it's the standard.
Back then, in 2003, everybody was like, oh my God, we've never seen this before except for on pro bodybuilders. What did this dude do? Diet for a whole freaking year? Well, ironically, I did diet like all of 2003 from January until June. And now if you don't show up with striated glutes, you're going to be settling for last.
Yeah, I think that's kind of on YouTube. It happened with strength standards where 7 years ago, to the average person, a 500-pound deadlift, oh man, it's a 500-pound deadlift. That's a big deal. And now just to get the conversation started, you need at minimum 600. 700 is deemed, 700 is the new 500. So it's crazy to see as both sports respectively get bigger, more attention. Striated glutes might be something that was rarer to see 15 years ago, but now it's expected. I want to open up the floor to the other 3DMJ members to maybe share some of their insights. I see the Godfathers ready to go. Brad, Andrea, just talking maybe a little bit about some of your most trying experiences competing or just being about, like, giving a perspective that a casual lifter would have no clue about, just to give them a window into that to get us started.
Go ahead,
how is it that I don't get to talk about my ass like Eric and Brad got to talk about
Please
their
tell
ass?
us about your ass, Jeff.
I don't understand that.
You know, your trophies do the talking for you.
Yeah,
so we just.
What I wanted to say is that, like, that's kind of the standard now, the elite standard. But I think we have to think about how you get there, because I think often if you're obsessed on it, like a lot of inexperienced competitors, let's say, they're going to chase that and they forget about the other parts of bodybuilding, symmetry, size, you know, those types of things. So if you're like overly aggressive with dieting, cardio, that type of thing, you might get the striated glutes, but at the same time, you might come in looking pretty flat because you've lost a lot of muscle. So we have to make sure that we're not, you know, just so focused on striated glutes that we forget about the other aspects of bodybuilding. So it's like, for me, when I'm, you know, trying to teach my athletes, I'm like, okay, we got performance to think about, we got conditioning to think about, your overall symmetry. So sometimes coming into a show with, let's say, less striated glutes might be an overall look for an athlete because their overall package is better, because they're just more complete looking. So I just wanted to throw that in there before we dive into the others.
Well, and early on, right? Like in the beginnings of the career, maybe the first 3 to 5 years, but I'm assuming, Jeff, that like over time, though, the whole goal is like, the full package includes those glutes too.
Yeah, I'm saying is like you want to make sure you're approaching striated glutes with everything in mind. Like when you get to the stage, you want, striated glutes, but you also want the size to go with it and the symmetry to go with it. You don't want to go in there looking flat and depleted. And there's some athletes that, you're like, you got striated glutes, but the guy next to you may be a little less conditioned, but he just looks overall just better. Especially when you're on a pro stage, it's like, you got to have everything on the pro level, not just one aspect.
I think right around like 2009 through maybe 2011, 12, it was still true that if you came into a show with striated glutes, you had a really good shot at winning a pro card just by having that almost alone. And I think you saw a lot of people just sacrificing everything to get striated glutes. And now that it's more competitive, and you will very often see the top 5 in the male bodybuilding amateur division all have in their weight class have striated glutes. Now I think people pay a lot more attention to, or should be at least paying a lot more attention to the things Jeff's talking about, like not sacrificing something else on the way to get there. Like for example, in 2009, I brought striated glutes to the stage in my last show. But I got beat by just a bigger, better bodybuilder. And that was uncommon then, but still happened. And now it's pretty damn common. Like, and so I totally agree with Jeff. It's like, showing up without striated glutes is kind of like showing up without your baseball glove. But at the same time, you actually need to be able to play baseball, with your glove is kind of where we're at now, where we have symmetrical, muscular, shredded people competing at the amateur level pretty regularly.
And that's been a big learning curve for all of us, because I know way back in the early, probably 2010, 2011, 2012, we would diet bodybuilders hard in an effort to get the striated glutes. And then, of course, what are we left with but striated glutes and skinny bodybuilders, skinny flat bodybuilders. And a lot of times they would end up getting beat by guys that maybe didn't have as deeply striated glutes, or just overall, like Eric said, he looked phenomenal at his show in '09. You know, but at the same time, there was just that one guy that had what Eric had, and was a little bit bigger and a little bit more symmetrical.
Yeah. And if you look at the kind of what we've talked about at 3DMJ in like the last 7 years, it's been stuff around like diet breaks, refeeds, recovery dieting, thinking about the next season, keeping it like off season. A lot of focus on the off season we've had in the last few years, training, and a lot of stuff that basically, the psychology of it, you know, what do we do between shows if we got more to do? Like basically keeping you safe, healthy, and performing well, like Jeff was talking about, so that you do get on stage with striated glutes and can keep doing that year after year, but still looking your best. And the reason we focus on so much of that is because of the process, and the place you have to go to can really beat you up. So there's so much to control. So yeah, I guess with all that said, the war stories we tell today are not what you should expect, but what can happen in the worst case scenarios when you have not achieved all these and ticked all these boxes. But they still happen sometimes even when you do everything right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you shouldn't strive for these things. It's like that American football player. You shouldn't strive to get concussions and then laugh it off and say, "Oh, I got my bell rung." Don't strive for these.
Yeah, these are the bodybuilding equivalent of concussions. Is probably what we should preface these as. Yeah.
I mean, my first season was 100%. It's the hardest thing you've ever done, but not because like it's physically hard, right? Because I won't say everybody, most people love training who get into bodybuilding. So like going to the gym isn't the hard part necessarily, but it's more. I remember with me, it was the feeling of starving because I straight did that. Not that, again, it wasn't very smart, but as a 5'2" person, I lost about 30 pounds within about 10 to 12 weeks to get on stage my first time by myself. And I couldn't get out of bed, could barely focus, was not super nice to everyone around me, hid myself in my room, my office, or the kitchen, lots of kitchen time, no social life. Like the whole fucking world just flipped. Like there's who I was before, and there's who I was for like these 3 years leading up to and after this first season. It's crazy. But you only see it on the other side. So like I look forward to about a year from now when Eric tells us how shitty he does feel right now. Which is he probably does feel way better than he has at the other prep, but I think we've all experienced where like there's some like, I'm okay, I got this, it's okay, I got it. And then the other side you're like, that was fucked up. Like that wasn't good. You know? And I could, let me know, Eric, but I would assume that's going to happen again. I look forward to it because I know this wasn't as bad as others, but it's still, you're going to see things on the other side.
Look at that stoic look on Eric's face. He's like, I dare you to say that I'm not doing well right now.
As well as he could be.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good point, is that some of the coping strategies to deal with how prep feels is all about framing your perspective. Mm-hmm. So I'm very intentionally framing this against 2011, 2009, 2007, because it makes it feel easier to me. So yeah. I'll start with one of my war stories, and this is something I've now been public about, so I'm a little more comfortable talking about it. But basically, 2009, my whole life exploded, and we bought a new home. I was working as a personal trainer, and it was right during the economy crashing, and we had turnover of 3 different owners of the studio in like a 3-month period. So there was a 1-month period where I actually didn't get paid at all, and we were broke at this time, and we just bought a new home. It wasn't good financially. We weren't even really 3D Muscle Journey yet. I knew these people, you know, and they were my friends and soon to be family, basically. And I tore my hamstring in April. in the middle of prep and kept going. And then early in the year, my father took his own life. And then later in the year, my uncle passed away from cancer. So it was a really brutal year. And on top of that, I kind of used prep as like a catalyst for just having something to pour my emotion into, to express some of the grief I had trouble expressing in a more normal way. And man, like my body was beat up. I think my stage weight was similar to what it is now, but looking back and considering my stage weight in 2011, which was about 6 pounds lighter, but I didn't look smaller in my opinion, I think I was just retaining a ton of water from stress. I used to get edema. Here's the actual war story.
Sorry, so Coach, what is edema for everyone?
So sorry, yeah, great. Water retention, specifically, you'll often see it around the ankles, kind of that swelling. It's typically cortisol or stress mediated, and you'll sometimes see it from eating quote unquote higher carbohydrates in someone whose diet and isn't used to it and their body doesn't process it as well. So I had a quote unquote high carb day of 150 grams of carbs, and I took pictures and showed Berto because I had ankle edema, which is ridiculous because that is what I was dieting on most of the time in 2011, and it was my my refeed at the end. So like that's one example. Also, and then to take it a little lighter, because some of the stuff is just hilarious when you look back on it. In 2000, it was either 2009 or 2011, I can't remember, but I had to have a conversation with my wife where I said, hey, honey, when I'm cooking and you come home, because she would get off, I would be cooking my last meal around the time she would get off from, she was a server at the time. She was working at Buca de Beppo as a waitress. And she would come home, and I would always be preparing a meal at this time. We kind of had a late shifted schedule. I had my first client at 10 a.m. because she would get off work late, and we'd go to bed late. And I'd make this salad, and we would sit down and watch one episode of some show we were binge watching. I guess that's not binge watching; it's only one episode. And then we would go to bed after that. So she would come up behind me and just give me a hug, like, hey, I love you. It's good to see you. And the hackles on the back of my neck would raise. It would make me feel uncomfortable. I would tense up, and I couldn't figure out why this random hug she'd give me in the kitchen while I'm prepping my meals to make me feel like I was having my space invaded. And any other time it was fine. And I started talking to Berto about it, and he's like, it's actually really common. He was like, my dogs, they food guard too. And I was like, you think I'm food guarding? And he was like, well, to be honest, like, just start paying attention. Next time you prep meals, when people get near you and get in your space, see how you feel. And I started to notice that when I was making food deep enough into prep, if people walked into the kitchen, it would just piss me off. Mm-hmm. So, the dog that's eating, and you walk near it and you just hear this low grumble and its eyes are tracking you? That's basically me when I prep. So.
Way to bookend that story, Coach, and make it lighter.
Yeah.
Right.
So
man,
that's
kind of my 2011 was similar to Eric's. Probably not as dark, but for my life, it was super dark. In fact, like, the only thing I had to gravitate towards positively was prep. So basically, I ended up getting a divorce that year. So I was going through a divorce, and it was at the time of the economic crash. So I lost my job, I lost my house, went bankrupt, split with my ex-wife. So the only thing that was holding me together was prep. So that was kind of it was a war story. Like, I was able to endure that and still get on stage at my best, get to a world championship and all that. And thankfully I had, Eric and Brad and Berto, around at the time to kind of support me through it. But man, it was like, looking back on it, it's like, man, I was in no position to really probably go through that. But it taught me a lot. Like, it's like, because you hear nothing but war stories or horror stories about bodybuilding prep, but that was actually something that was positive in my life that I can grab onto and to keep me afloat. So that was a kind of a good learning experience for me. That sometimes, like, because I've had some athletes that is kind of similar situations where a lot of things in their life that are kind of going wrong, and your first instinct's like, well, you should stop this prep. And I'm like, well, no, it's probably not a good idea to stop this prep, because that's the one thing that's keeping this person going.
Yeah.
So, and it's been the flip side too, where I've actually had athletes where it's like, no, you need to stop this prep because you need to take care of shit outside the gym that's kind of in disarray right now.
That's funny that it helped y'all. It straight ruined I had a lot of good shit going in life. And like I was in grad school, I was having fun, had all these friends, I was partying, I was at OU. Like my whole grad experience was great that first year, and then between my 2 years of my master's is when I did this, and then the second half was like a shit show because I didn't do anything in it. So that's nice that it was a good for all. But
it was that season. I mean, the difference is I'd already done a season in 07, and then in the middle of my prep, 2 months in, that's where the big thing happens. And then I didn't like. I think it depends on the individual. Like, let's say someone is going through a tough time with their kids and their wife and their family and their job, and they decide to prep as a way to distract themselves from it. That typically doesn't go well. Or if they, like, you can tell it's just another thing that they're stressed about. Like, it's not a coping strategy, it's another added stress, depending on how they deal with it. So there's kind of like three things that can happen. It can either be, I don't have power in the situation, so I put my focus on prep to feel empowered and to give me an outlet. Or I don't know how to deal with the situation, so I'm going to use prep as an escape and neglect those other things. Or stuff is happening in addition to prep and I'm failing at everything. So it's like 2/3 of the time with some of my clients, I'm like, I really don't think this is a good time to prep. But sometimes, like, they've got nothing else, like all they have right now, like a family member dies, but they're really focused on prep. I've literally had this, and if I can identify some of the same things that are going on for me, then yeah, I'll support them through it because it can be a catalyst for feeling and processing. But if it's like, yeah, my family member died, I'm going to do a prep because squirrel, like try to look the other way. That's a little different, It's not exactly the same thing. So I think, and like Jeff said, especially if there are things I need to take care of, but I'm going to focus on prep because I don't want to look at them, then that's when the coach needs to say, hey, your life is falling apart around you because you're focusing on prep, not this is the only thing propping you up.
That's how I lived that. I lived that shit in my early 20s. Like I was like, you have to have, like, of course you got to be, that's like a double-edged sword. You need to have that fire, that passion, to chase your goals, but at the same time, it could bite you in the ass, and that's what it did for me. I was so obsessed that the shit that was going on around me, I just ignored it. Everything went to the back burner, and bodybuilding was at the front burner, and that's all I cared about. And it was more of like I can control, like a control thing. Like I can't control the things that were going on around me. It was all in disarray, but that was the one thing I had full control of. So it was kind of empowering, but at the same time, man, life really sucked outside the gym. So that's why for me as a coach, when I see like these signs of someone like kind of using bodybuilding, even it doesn't have to be a prep. It could just be someone who's really just loves weight training and they're in the gym all the time. Like I'm like, man, you're why don't you put this energy into the troubles that you mentioned you're having? Like, if you're having relationship troubles or if you're having like issues with school or work, it's like if you take care of that stuff outside the gym first and that gets in harmony, usually weight training is much improved. Like just the overall balance of everything. Stress levels go down, performance improves. So it's just better all around, in my opinion, to make sure that like balance is good in and out of the gym. So like I said, man, it's just crazy. Like I look back and I'm like, man, I was an asshole for a good 10, 15 years.
Jeez.
Because I was so obsessed on bodybuilding, and it's kind of like a selfish endeavor. Not something I'm too proud of, but I don't mind speaking about it because if one person can listen to this and kind of gets them to think a little bit in a positive way, then hey, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Jeff, look at those pecs, though, bro. Is all I gotta say in response to that.
Worth it. 15 years, that's it?
Worth it. 15 years of alienating your friends, worth it.
I'm jacked now, yeah.
The thing is, though, I just said like how it ruins but it's like my favorite thing ever, though, too. Like, I look back and it ruined all these things or whatever, supposedly everything outside of it. But like Jeff said, there's a feeling that I think you need to have to be good at this sport, and it's like you have to prep because you can't not prep. Is the only way that this goes well, I feel like. When people tiptoe or when people do it to, again, to fix a relationship maybe or to find it a way to transform my body or whatever, I feel like the people that make it to this stage and that stick it out past the first weird couple of off seasons are the people that love it a certain amount of craziness. Or like, that I got a chest bump. Thanks. But you have to be some type of crazy to go through it, because you will be unstable at some point, and unstable with food guarding, or unstable with, I don't know how many other things in life, but of like crying uncontrollably, weird food behaviors that I'm sure we'll talk about in a second.
Can we talk about that for a second, though, guys? Because as an outsider, when you said, Andrea, you have to have some type of crazy to decide to do this, I actually would say that both Eric strongly and Alberto, from knowing both of them, destigmatized some of my maybe preconceived notions of what it means to be a bodybuilder. Meaning that, and I shared this in a previous podcast, I told Eric this about this guy in Canada that went to the same gym as myself, that competed in the Canada Cup, but just his overall, his behavior and his patterning, his mindset, where I would personally view it as extremely unhealthy. But then upon meeting and interacting with individuals like Alberto and Eric, it shifted my perception, where it isn't just the realm of those individuals that have a crazy obsession or something like that. It's almost, now correct me if I'm wrong, but for some people it could be the pursuit, obviously, of bettering oneself. It's almost maybe akin in some ways to not quite a fasting experience, but you're purposely restricting certain things within yourself. It's a personal journey. That you go through, and there's a lot you can get out of it. All I'm trying to say with this is that my perception actually has been skewed more favorably from interacting with both Alberto and Eric, because my preconceived notions or my prior interactions with individuals would be much more in that camp. And I'm not saying that's what you said at all, but just that idea. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I've talked about this on our show too, that it's like you, to get to that level of lean, like it's not the decision, like when you start the prep and you're like, I'm ready to do this, I really want to, and you have this, like I said, no one can tell you otherwise. Like you have to be very ready. And when we see people tiptoeing is when we almost talk people out of it a lot as coaches. But when you know someone's very ready, but then it's like the months into it where it very slowly has crept up on you to where you're a different person. You're obviously not entirely, but like, for example, because Eric's in it and it's easy to pick on it, like he answers, Brad was just the other day saying he answers base camp messages, like our group chat. He's very short. And that's because Eric is so experienced as an athlete and a coach. But as you can imagine, with someone like him and it just affecting him, how much more that can be amplified when you're new or haven't done it before or whatever. And like, I mean, I've cried over food, which is not something any of us do now. Yeah, you get rage fits. Like
Brad, I think of Brad throwing away a hard-boiled egg when it doesn't peel right.
It was the entire carton. Yeah, I went into a fit because I was trying to separate the egg yolk from the egg white, and I was, of course, over the pan, and the carton of eggs is next to me, so I'm separating the egg yolk, and in my mind, it was the end of the world because the yolk fell into the pan.
Done.
And that was fat that I could not fit into my macros, and so the pan, the carton of eggs, everything went into the trash.
Easy. Problem solved.
I lost it. I literally lost it. Yeah.
Mine was at the cow fit.
Rage.
The cow fit in Citrus Heights, Eric? There's one in Citrus Heights, right?
There's a bunch of cow fits.
Yeah, I was training with Matt Ogus and Brandon, who's now my boyfriend, but I had in my shaker cup, my intra-workout carbs was 10 grams of carbs via some carb shake. Like, through this whole thing, it was like Propel, creatine, and like a little bit of this 10 grams. It was going to get me through this workout. And somewhere in like set 1 or 2, I dropped it on the floor and probably lost 3 ounces. Cried. Immediately cried. Sat on the floor, cried. And Brandon was like, oh my God. I was like, I need to go to the bathroom.
I need to date this chick.
I know, right? And we've almost been together 6 years, just so y'all know. Yeah, but I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh my God. I was immediately just crushed. Like, how am I going to make it through this leg workout with 8 instead of 10 grams of carb? How's it going to happen? I don't know.
What'd you say, Jeff?
Yeah. I've never cried.
And that's why your pecs, big paychecks.
He's better than us.
Yeah.
Why?
He just binges.
Yeah.
That's Jeff's thing.
Damn.
You want to know how much weight I lost in my first prep? back in '93. I had zero education on bodybuilding whatsoever. I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this thing. 6 weeks, 30 pounds.
No.
Yep. So it was a horror story prep. Like literally, I was eating maybe 1,200 calories a day. And I was going from about 195 pounds down to 165, 160. No refeeds. I didn't even know what a refeed was. And I didn't binge or nothing. Like I stuck through it, and I trained, and I got on stage looking terrible, but it taught me a lot. Like it taught me that I can grind. Like I can grind. I can do this. And I was still like the day of the show, after I placed, I don't know, 10th out of 16 or whatever it was. I was like, yeah, I want to do this again. So it was like it kind of taught me like it was the shittiest prep I've ever heard of. But still, it taught me a lot that, hey, I can do this thing and I can grind. So, and then we fast forward to now, like here we are in 2019, and I'm like as cool as the other side of the pillow. So it's like when you start out, like even if you have coaches and things like that, you're gonna make mistakes. The coaches are learning you too, so they're gonna make mistakes. I mean, that's normal. But as you go along, you get better and better at it. So all these things that we're talking about, that are like shit, we're doing all this crazy shit, but you get better at it as you go along. So now it's like if I drop a yolk in the pan, I'm not throwing my pan out. I'm just gonna take my spoon real calmly and take the yolk out and put it in the garbage and still cook my egg whites. So it's just over time, experience cures a lot of the things that we're talking about, a lot of insecurities and doubts.
I think it has to be intentional experience though, because like the gentleman that I think Omar was referring to is a pretty high level competitor, right? And I think part of the reason why maybe myself and Berto, and I would say that's due to the exposure as well of the rest of the 3DMJ crew to me and Berto, why we maybe challenge some of those perceptions is because we very much had an intentional focus on bringing the positive aspects of bodybuilding forward and trying to do this whole bodybuilding thing in a way that is sustainable long term for a lifestyle and beneficial. So like the net overall effect, although there are downsides to doing bodybuilding, is one that is better for your life, that you're better for it. And exactly like exactly like Jeff said, there's no one named Greg here. Exactly like Jeff said.
Knuckles is always in your heart, bro.
Always. I feel the mass. Yeah. So just like Jeff said that he learned to grind, I learned so much self-efficacy from bodybuilding, and I think it's why I'm successful in academics, reasonably successful in business, and why I just don't really give up on things, just because I know that my limit is probably somewhere beyond what I think it is. So I've learned so much from bodybuilding that's positive. Yeah. I also learned some negative things that I've had to unlearn and then mold and structure and change and be aware of. And bodybuilding does change you. I think Andrea is 100% right, but it can change you for the better as well. And I think that's really what we try to focus on, mitigating the potential harm and magnifying and bringing out of this limited scope of just the competitive aspect of the sport, the betterment to other aspects of your life.
Yeah, because there's a lot of athletes that we've had that have gone through a prep where they've applied everything they've learned through the prep and applied it in other areas of life, whether it's school, job, or whatnot. And they go on to more success outside of bodybuilding because of it. So it is a positive because it takes get out of your comfort zone. Like if you've never dieted to extreme levels of leanness, like when you experience it, you're like, holy shit. And if you make it through that and you persevere through it, you're like, okay, I can do anything if I made it through that.
You feel like a superhero.
So me going through 6 weeks, losing 30 pounds, I'm like, oh shit, okay. Yeah, so I have to do this now? Oh, that's nothing. That's easy.
Yeah. Build some resilience. And I guess that's what I was trying to get at, is that not to invalidate anything, Andrew, you're sharing about that aspect of the mindset, but for me, from before, what I saw outside of 3DMJ in other circles compared to what I see in 3DMJ, there is a marked difference, and I think that's very much worth noting.
Yeah, for sure, and it's like Jeff said, you finish like it's. I only say that like it ruined a lot of things, and like way in hindsight, it's obviously why I'm here today talking to you, because bodybuilding has had a huge impact on my life. And Jeff's right, you finish that first prep and you do feel like a superhuman, and you unfortunately the reaction is, I just did it, I'm gonna do it again next year, and then you look even worse the next year, whatever. But but it's really I hate using that word, but it's like empowering, and like Eric always says, it only works until it doesn't. Like, you're like, shit, I'll do it again next year, it'll be good, and then you never put on the weight, you try to diet again, and then you crash and burn or whatever, and then 5 years later you come out and you love bodybuilding. But and we've talked about that in other shows, it's like a 2 or 3 in and out of season thing before you finally start settling and you have the grasps of deficits and gaining periods, and you understand how your personality changes, how your lifestyle needs to change, and all that stuff. And it's not quick. Like another sport, you get out of a basketball game, you take the lesson to your next game. It's like you get out of the season, it takes you a while to get those good lessons out of it and become the better person because of it. But unfortunately, like at first, especially if you don't have a coach or don't really know what you're doing, is when it takes longer to get out of that, or you maybe don't get out of it and you hate the sport. So
yeah, it's a funny thing. It's why it's addicting too, and it's why you have to see. It's like you have to keep. It's like you have this wonderful relationship. You're so passionately in love with this person, but it's got to stay long distance. You can't see them too frequently, and it always has the potential to be abusive. Yeah. But if you keep it right, and you look inward, and you keep all aspects of the relationship going, and they stay in France and you stay in the Midwest, then it goes really well.
This is sounding like a very real experience, Eric.
It's a weird thing, man, but true love perseveres, and that's why I haven't competed since 2011. I'm doing it now because I had the self-awareness and the experience to know I really shouldn't do this while I'm doing a PhD, but it will never go away. The stage is always there, and so there's so many things you have to do. You have to foster a intrinsic motivation for bodybuilding, because if you're all about winning, then it's like each time you see a season pass you, it's like you're missing an opportunity to go out there and win. You want to be the champ, you want to defend your title, or you get your pro card, you want to compete as a pro, or you want to beat your previous self. And then you start learning only how to relate to your nutrition by doing off seasons and in seasons, and you start not paying attention to your hunger signals. So you're basically sliding into obesity in the off season. You only know how to deal with it by dieting back down. And weird shit happens. Like you look up and you're like, I'm more interested in my meal after my show than the show, even though I started competing to be a champion. And now I just can't control myself and I'm just getting fat in the off season. What do? I don't know how to do anything else except prep again. And I can't tell you how common that pattern is, but it starts with love. So that's why you really have to take that experience, that first one that taught you, man, I have much more potential than I think I had, and go, right, but this is like this ritualistic, rite of passage that I'm putting myself through. Like most cultures, they have you do that once, and then you're a man or woman and you're good. And I'm trying to do this every other year. That might mess me up. So you have to kind of temper it and not return to the fire too frequently, so.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. 3DMJ prides itself on keeping this show, our blog, and our YouTube channel as free and relevant sources of information for our community week after week. We also release additional free video courses as often as possible at 3dmjvault.com. If you'd like to help support our mission and our work, please consider becoming a monthly patron of our endeavors. Go to patreon.com/team3dmj and donate a couple dollars per month to our cause of helping educate and grow the drug-free bodybuilding and powerlifting communities worldwide. You can definitely choose to donate more, and if you do so, we'll send you a discount code for future use on any of our paid products, but any little bit helps, and we appreciate your monthly support in any amount that you see fit. So again, you can start assisting the team at patreon.com/team3dmj. That's patreon.com/team3dmj. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, I think, didn't Brad leave his kid at the hospital to go train? Is that the right story?
I feel that is maybe things that Brad didn't want to be shared publicly and need some context.
No. Tell the story. Tell the story.
Xander was not born yet. He was coming any hour now. but no, I technically did not leave my child at the hospital. I left my unborn child and my wife at the hospital while I went to go train. But yeah, basically you're right. But I mean, at the time it was like, I can't miss this workout. You know, this is chest day, and it won't be till next week until I get chest
And they'll
day,
fall
right?
off.
And I had to at least get the compounds in, you know. And so yeah, there was a 24-hour fitness that was right down the road, probably not a 5-10 minute drive. I went down there and paid the $25 drop-in fee and got half my chest workout in, and they called me up and I went back and they got to see my child be born.
Wow. Now that's dedication. When we say 3DMJ, dedication, desire, discipline. That's dedication.
That's
When Eric said
nice.
it's all about love, that's what it made me think about.
Yep. But I think most bodybuilders can look back at something they're not necessarily proud of. And if they can't, that probably means they're still doing a lot of stuff that they eventually won't be proud of. so it's like, yeah, I think those are all just ways to illustrate that it can become so absorbing that cycle that it can really put blinders on who you would like to be and who you really are at the core, like what your values are. You have to, because like Andrea said, a lot of people choose to do a prep, but the people who stick with the sport long term, they have to have the ability to flip a switch to where they will achieve a goal no matter what comes in front of them. Like they're willing to lose 30 pounds in 6 weeks. They're willing to risk, although not actually miss the birth of their child. They're willing to risk finishing their masters. In my case, they're willing to push past, bankruptcy and a torn hamstring and grieving the loss of a loved one, or all the stuff that we've been talking about. You have to basically just not have it not be an option for you not to do what needs to be done to get on stage. And that, of course, anytime you draw a line or make an ultimatum or it's black and white, yes or no, there's huge risk for something amazing or huge risk for something ugly. So it's then learning to have that wisdom and that experience to know when that line should be drawn and when it shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think that story of Brad might top everything.
That's
in
my
terms
favorite.
of what you're willing to sacrifice. Like, sorry, man, gotta go train chest. Peace.
I don't.
Yeah, definitely not my finest hour, that's for sure.
But Xander's great.
Just
Just so you know, his kid's great. Didn't know.
Was your wife understanding, or like was it like how did that go down? I'm just curious.
It's funny because the only people that were there were my wife and my in-laws, and of course my wife was drugged heavily because they were actually giving her some stuff to suppress, the labor because Xander was so flipping early, and so yeah, she was pretty much out of it, and she didn't know too much else was going on, but yeah, my in-laws were so understanding. I just remember my father-in-law looking at me, go, "Man, Brad, that's dedication right there."
Nice.
Probably much more understanding than a lot of father-in-laws would have been.
But I think
Probably
y'all-
too understanding.
Yeah, well, you all have had. It's affected your relationships, right? Like like I know that's one day in Brad's life, but I know it's affected y'all's relationships in bigger ways, right? Eric and Jeff.
Well, I mean, Jeff was talking about his divorce, so I mean.
Yeah.
What did bodybuilding influence that at all, Jeff? Or no, that was just it was
It
a lot
kept him
going on.
in it. Is that right?
It was part of the reason, but it wasn't the reason why we just basically I got married really young at 19. So
Yeah.
it was just like we became two different people, over time. So it was just kind of a slow, gradual build-up. But yeah, I wouldn't say bodybuilding was the blame of it. More of the behavior around bodybuilding was it, not bodybuilding itself. So it was just the way I kind of, handled the situation. Like I said, just being super selfish. So.
Yeah, and I would say my own personal experience after I did my 07 prep, where I did become a different person, got very obsessive and neglected things. Barb basically had a come to Jesus conversation with me, and she was like, "Hey, this isn't what I signed up for. Like when we got together, you like to lift a lot. That's great. But not this. And you can compete in bodybuilding, but it just can't be like this. And I think that was what really, it was something I knew, but that I needed to hear and understand the gravity of the decisions I was making and how they were affecting someone I cared about. Because you get so wrapped up in it and you don't know that. You need someone to kind of snap you out of it sometimes. You need your friends to be like, hey, what's the deal? Or your family to be like, what's wrong with you? And what also helped for me was I had that conversation with Barb late in prep. And then once prep finished, that was actually way worse than prep itself for me. I put on nearly 50 pounds in 2 months and had no control over my ability to moderate my weight gain. And that's when I was like, whoa, this isn't the way it's supposed to be or what I expected. Something's wrong. And I had to kind of question everything and reevaluate it. And that's really kind of what drove me to connect with Jeff and to connect with Berto and for us to be like, hey, there's got to be a better way, and there's got to be a way that this can be life building and not life destroying, kind of thing. So
that's a good point, though, that we've missed a lot of them too, horror stories into prep and the shit we've done to get shredded. But in our experience, we've all talked about this tons of times, that after your first season or two is usually the darkest part of a bodybuilder's career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you think about why the behaviors happen during prep, so just for someone who's like what the hell is going on? Why is this so hard? I've done a cut. It's nothing like that. There's a big difference between just dieting, losing a little bit, or even dieting for a photo shoot that you might have done for your 40th or something like that, versus the process of getting down to truly elite level conditioning, to essential levels of body fat, which you have to do to get to that point. There is physiological changes that drive behavior. So just really quickly, I'll drop some science on everybody. Your ability to become satiated after eating food goes away. Your status of being hungry becomes constant to where you're always at least a little bit hungry. Food is no longer satiating. Food tastes better too. And you are more irritable. You have less blood glucose stability, so you feel tired. Your blood pressure drops substantially to what is typically considered low blood pressure. Most of the time you get to a point where your resting heart rate will be so low that it might be below 40. It's not uncommon among young men. So your sympathetic nervous system tone changes. You will find that your ability to use the toilet changes. So your bowel movements will greatly decrease in frequency. And other weird stuff will happen. You will start to either, depending on the person, it seems to be pretty individual, sleep a lot in a very long time and always want to sleep, or only be able to sleep for a few hours, wake up and have trouble falling back asleep, and then be tired later in the day. It's not even like you're really adapting to it. You just can't sleep, and then you feel tired. And you will typically see drops in testosterone in men and women, but it's a smaller number to measure. It's harder to tell. One case study showed a drop to 1/5 of the normal testosterone levels, which is actually below normal ranges. Temporarily, it does come back. Women see a loss of their menstrual cycle, which can take a very long time to come back if they don't start feeding again. So very similar things. And this is all what's called low energy availability. And it's what our body is doing to keep what it thinks is the most likelihood of not dying during famine. So it's shutting down all non-essential processes, like anything that might lead to children who are going to eat more food and force more calories to be burned. Yeah, exactly. Make you produce milk, all that stuff. Burning excess calories from reproduction, not going to let that happen. Dropping your energy expenditure as much as possible. Just shutting down everything non-essential. And this creates an intense food focus, and there's actually a biological drive towards disordered eating, which has been known since the 50s when they started doing some semi-starvation studies to understand how to rehab the folks who were in POW camps during World War II and post-Holocaust. So those effects are so much above and beyond your casual cut. that they're almost different things, even though it's really just on the same continuum. And so that's the reality of what people are dealing with. You can mitigate a lot of that with things like diet breaks, just simply dieting slower, resistance training to help you maintain, bone mass, lean mass, all the physiological changes, not overdoing cardio, doing things around sleep hygiene, taking breaks. It's probably the most important thing that we've seen, and it can be way, 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 way better, but it's still you getting down to a very, very low level body fat, which requires at least periods of being at a low energy availability. Even if you eat up into shows, even if you come back, there's going to be spots where you're feeling like, oh man, I'm really feeling it. So that is all the things we're talking about, why you experience that and why your personality changes. If everyone's just wondering like, well, why would you do that, or why don't you do it differently? It's some of it's unavoidable, but you can definitely mitigate it. And the way we know it's unavoidable, no matter how well you do it, is simply put that there's almost nobody on the planet who walks around in stage condition. No one just decides on a random Saturday, hey, you want to do a show? It's not like playing a pickup game of basketball. So clearly people can't maintain this condition unless they're just a total genetic outlier with very, very low levels of body fat, who have also habituated to eating low enough calories. They're out there, but they're incredibly rare.
Probably not healthy.
They might be. You never know. There's a few people out there who I've seen seem to perform fine and eat enough and seem relatively normal. They're just not the norm by any stretch or means. Like Berto can walk around at 170, which for him is like
pretty lean, yeah.
5 to 10 pounds over stage weight, and he looks really, really shredded. He could get on stage. He wouldn't be like the most diced person, but no one would be like, hey, you didn't show up in shape. They would be like, yeah, you can get a little tighter, And that's a place where most other people are not functioning normally.
Yeah.
So.
And personally, Omar, I think because of all those things, the reason it's the darkest place is more of an emotional thing, more of a, I've now seen myself the best I can be, and now I'm losing it all. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So to add to that, sorry to get back to the question, I forgot where I was going with all that. So during prep, all the weird stuff we're talking about, all the horror stories, are the things people do to cope with that reality, or when that reality makes them not be able to reach their goals and the emotional fallout from that. And then all the things that they push out, the social isolation, ignoring people, just being so focused they can't even focus on other things, all of the social collateral or career collateral or family collateral, or just life balance collateral comes from dealing with that while still getting to the goal, or failing to get to that goal and failing to deal with it. And the reason why that's not as bad as what happens afterwards is when that goal goes away and now you have nothing to focus on, but all of that physiological reality remains. It's just like the avalanche falls, and you eat, and sometimes you don't even train. Sometimes you're just a mess afterwards if you don't have any kind of exit strategy.
Yeah, I recall after that 2011 season, I got back from the World Championships, like the elite show. Like I finally made it there on a high, flew back from DC back to California, got in my house on Sunday evening, sat on my couch and go, now what? Like it was like the most empty feeling. It was weird. It's like I'm riding this high the day before. The next day I feel so empty. So it's crazy. And you're like, okay, now what do I do? Well, shit, I'm gonna eat like 6 peanut butter cups. And then it was like Eric said, like that following week, I think I trained maybe once or twice. It was just like, because I put so much energy. It was like a 47 weeks of prepping, plus you factor in the multiple years of training before that into that one pinnacle event. And it was like letting the air out of the balloon. So it's like I've learned now as a coach, like, okay, I need to make sure that my athletes have something to focus on past this one little, basically pit stop that they're on in this journey. So that's like why I really try to teach and coach the career versus just a show or a season. Like there's a lot of things that can go on afterwards, and we definitely want to make sure that when you're taking an athlete who's gone through that much energy, you want to make sure that they're focusing on other things past that. So that's so important too, especially from like the nutrition side of things, training side of things. Like you do need a week, like maybe after, like, okay, I need to just chill. Maybe you don't have like a specific training program you run for a week or two. Give them a break, let them do whatever. But still, there needs to be a game plan in place before that show is kind of done and over with.
Yeah, I was
piggybacking on what you just said. What's the quote that you used in our seminar that we did in 2016? Because that was a great quote. It was something of.
Who?
It was the very last slide that you put up. It was something to the effect of you, Andrea. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready to get in the best shape of your life only to let it go, or something like that? How did you word that?
That was a few years ago, but it was something like that, where like you, maybe I used numbers, maybe I didn't. Like, say you're Omar, you look pretty good in your head on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate yourself? Like maybe 7, 8, 9, 9.5.
0.
Give me one. I think you look like a solid 7.5, maybe 8. I think you do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you're not even prepping. But imagine it's like the whole, you spend over half a year to get yourself to what in your head is a 10. This is the best I've ever looked, right? And then now, once your season's over, let's say you hang out like 8.5, 9, but now you think it looks like shit.
Right.
And so like you'll never get that back again, that you were cool with how you looked. And that was a really very personal to me. I know I had a real big problem with like, I've done this prep. I think I am a superhero now. Like you said, I'm empowered. I can do this. I feel great. Holy shit, I can't believe I've done it. Oh, if I eat even a little bit like a normal human, I hate the way I look now. So I guess I'm just going to live like a robot for a few years. And that's where it was, again, the post season becomes really weird, because you've now forever changed how you feel about your body and how it looks and what's acceptable now. Anyways. Was that it, Brad?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, that was it. Because I can so relate to that, because
Same.
I remember staying really lean, too lean, and too fragile for too long. And it was that quote was what kind of, and I know I'm dense, I'm a little slow. But yeah, it was that quote. Like 3 years later, it was like, oh my gosh, that's what I was doing. I was basically doing myself more harm, trying to keep the shreds, to keep the 10, realizing that I was fragile. I was in a fragile state, and you're not meant to be that way, and it was a long time before I came to the realization that this is not sustainable. This is not something that you even want to sustain, much less should strive for.
Yeah, that was me a couple of years ago, being at a older age. I was like an older bodybuilder. I got to stay 10 pounds over stage weight at this point. I'm not going to gain too much more muscle. So I'm like, okay, let me stay lean, because that's what, quote unquote, the generalizations are out there. So I'm like staying 10 pounds over, 12 pounds over. But man, over time, like it didn't dawn on me till later. I started, feeling like shit. I feel like I'm dieting all the time. I feel hungry all the time. All those symptoms that Eric mentioned, like that was me 10 pounds over. And it took a while for me to realize, like, shit, I need to stop doing what, quote unquote, what the generalization is, and go to a place where I need to be, where I feel like more like a normal human being. And that meant for me, I needed to gain another 10 pounds. So I'm going to be 20 pounds over stage weight, 25 over. And I had to learn how to actually love my body at that weight, that softer body. And that was kind of hard. But eventually I was like, okay, this is the happy place. And for me, it's like all those symptoms I was going through, it was rubbing off on my family, my wife and my kids. And so I'm like, no, I just need to basically go to that place where I'm comfortable. I can perform well in the gym. I can recover well. I'm not beat up, like Brad was saying. I'm not as fragile. So it was just like it was kind of a rough spot, like a good year. I think I was like that, where I was just staying relatively too lean. So that's what Yeah.
And so much of our coaching and some of the things we recommend are results of managing that all these things. So like the things I often tell my athletes is, hey, I want you to see your physique like hitting a 90 mile per hour fastball, right? It's not your body anymore. You kind of have to have some separation between your competitive physique and your body image and your self-esteem, right? Like you can't define yourself by your body if you're going to be competing with it, or you can really get wrapped up in this. Well, this is the objectively, this is where I'm at my best. So therefore I am worse than that when my body doesn't look the same. It's more like, no. That's what your body must look like when you get on stage. And then your body looks like it needs to look like for you to be healthy and happy at other times, and trying to be able to get that new or regained relationship with your body image is no small feat. And I think it's something that athletes don't necessarily know is coming. And they think like, oh, look, I'm looking great. I'll get in the best shape of my life. We'll go back to the off season. I'll build the muscle again. And I'll go back to it. And then you have like this goal and then this feeling, and they don't match. And you get people who are really struggling with how to enjoy or even succeed in the off season. So yeah, that like a lot of the reasons we have a lot of our athletes compete in powerlifting is to get an external focus, not because we think they got to get a big squat and bench press. Like, sure, the big three help and they can be incorporated into a bodybuilding program quite easily. So it's a good fit. You know, there are some weight classes that maybe we can think about how they relate to your stage weight. So if someone's like, yeah, I competed 180 pounds, sweet, I'll do the 83 kilo class. I'll just be, 3 pounds over stage weight all the time. No. That doesn't make any sense. Let's do where you're actually strong. We'll go to the 93 kilo class. Great. Now you're 25 pounds over stage weight, which is probably reasonable for someone at that body weight, right? That's a healthy, great place to perform. Awesome. Like I shouldn't be an 83 kg competitor. I'm 6 feet tall. I could be if I stayed tight all the time.
You should be a 120 plus. At 6 feet, that's what you need to be, coach.
Probably not with my bone structure, but some would say, I think even 105 would be a little more reasonable than 120, believe it or not. So yeah, just 33 pounds lighter, no big deal. Coach, so yeah.
You know what we're going to call this episode? This is now the one. We got to call it this. Death, divorce, and abandoning your child. Tales from prep.
Wow. I love it.
Good. Well, can we hear more?
Oh yeah, Andrew, I could start. I've not gone obviously to the same level, but
let's hear it.
last year, Eric came up to Toronto, and we're working on a project. And one time, normally when I'm in a surplus, I'm 3,600 calories, somewhere along that line. But one day we were just busy filming all that stuff. It was deadlifts, Eric. I don't know if you remember. I only ate 3,000 calories, and we're doing just 4 sets of 6. And I got lightheaded, and that wasn't cool. So everything that you guys said, completely relate. Like that one time where I felt a little lightheaded, my blood sugar was a little off. Whew. I know the grind. Like I'm there with the guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you sat down, Jeff, on that couch after going to Worlds, after I sat down after the set of deadlifts where I felt lightheaded.
You're right there with me.
Right there with you, man.
Right there. Yep.
The journey.
Well,
that's awesome.
Should we do? I'm trying to think, like before, like as we're getting shredded, or stuff we've done to stay shredded.
I think just any kind of story. Let's go absurd. I think the focus should be absurd, us or our clients. Things that are a little more lighthearted.
Okay, there
just
was
weird shit.
I got some good ones. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think mine's as bad then. I'll get mine out. So after I'd already competed, but I was in the whole like, I look better than I've ever been before, but not as good as stage. So like I look like shit. So I need to keep grinding 24/7, 365. So it was like during this year that I was like, I can go out with my friends now. I'm totally normal, but I would go in my clutch, like my going out clutch. I would have celery packed in it in baggies with like stevia and cinnamon for flavor. So I'd literally be at the bar in grad school, and I would go to the bathroom and eat celery, and then go out and drink my water because I couldn't have beers anymore. And I thought I was like, I'd gotten bodybuilding down. I was like, oh, this is just a hack.
This is the social life.
Yeah, I'm good. So that was one of mine.
I think the craziest thing is the sleep eating. To me, that is mind-boggling.
I've never done it. Y'all talk about it.
So I mean, there's sleepwalking, right? There's actually, and it's fairly common when you're in starvation, you will get up in the middle of the night and eat boxes of cereal or cartons of ice cream.
Well, it's common enough that now I've had one client who's done it. Brad's had one.
Berto's had one.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Brad's had 3.
Wow.
Well, okay.
So we're not to believe Berto and whether or not his client truly cooks pancakes while he's sleeping.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that yet.
That sounds crazy to me. It depends. Cereal was just like putting in your mouth in a daze, like in a half sleep. I could see that. When you cooking pancakes.
Well, I don't know. It is so rare though. Like in the first, we're talking about competitive bodybuilders who are getting shredded, so it's a small number of people. But over the years, I'd say collectively we've probably coached maybe 1,000 people to the stage conservatively. So 5 out of 1,000, we're still talking about 0.5%. You know, so it's a small amount of people, but it's enough that it's real, man, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My guy was so dedicated that he would get up, see the wrapper there on the ground of the
and track it,
and the cereal boxes. He would weigh the remaining cereal.
Oh man!
How much that he ate and include it in his macros, and then told me about it after a month of this happening. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I probably should let you know. I eat when I'm sleepwalking."
I would be so pissed if I woke up and realized I had like half my carbs for the day. I'd be so pissed.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Yeah.
I'd try to throw up probably.
My gal who did that, she just got padlocks for all of her pantries and her like. And my first thought was, I feel like maybe we should be doing something like to address the problem. Like, is this should we get therapy? Is there subconscious things? And she's like, practical solutions for practical problems. I eat when I'm not conscious. I'm just going to put locks on all my doors so I can't actually do it. So, worked.
Jeff, who was yours? What was yours? Same as Brad?
Yes, similar. Rice cakes, though. So it was kind of a not too bad of sleep eating. So at least it was kind of like lower calories. But yeah, he would basically keep the package out. So the next day he could count the rice cakes. We knew how many he ate. Which was typically only about like 2 or 3 rice cakes. But he would wake up in the middle of the night, go to the kitchen, eat 2 or 3 rice cakes, go back to bed. Like he doesn't even remember doing it. He just knows he does it.
Can someone just explain rice cakes to me because they're disgusting? But why?
But have you had the cinnamon ones? The cinnamon apple? Have you had
that's
those?
One of my.
So I had the caramel ones, which actually were better. Plain rice cake. There's a guy that goes to the gym who was prepping and he was eating rice cakes and he just said, "Oh man, these taste delicious." And I'm like, "You're a loser. These are rice."
So I will explain rice cakes to you. Each one's 10 grams of carbs.
That's
right.
it.
That's it.
It's the explanation. Same as the celery.
And they're that big. Yeah. And you and you get to a point where it takes 45 minutes to cook rice, and then you get to a point where 45 minutes of cooked rice would take you a week to eat because your carbs are so low. So it just makes a lot more sense to get rice cakes. So
and I like sweets. So caramel rice cakes versus let's say eating brown rice
with almond butter. Okay, so in prep I would do the buttered popcorn because those are only like 8 carbs instead of like 11 because I'm a small human, right? And it was worth it. So I would do the buttered popcorn ones with Walden Farms fake peanut butter spread on it. And then Walden Farms fake pancake syrup, and that was heaven. It was a delicacy.
Yeah.
At the
so
time.
It changes your palate. That's something I should like. Bodybuilding changes your palate. I did not like mushrooms. Did a prep in 2007. I've been rotating what vegetables I put in my egg white omelet because I don't got much else I can rotate, and I can have all kinds of different vegetables because I basically have very few calories. And I was like, you know what? I hate mushrooms, but screw it. They kind of smell good. I don't know why. And I started liking mushrooms. Don't know why. Mustard, same thing. Almost a calorie-free condiment. Didn't like it beforehand. Started putting it on stuff and like, hey, this has a flavor. Now I like it. So you start.
Here's the horror story. So Eric's prep in 2011. This is before I really knew him too well, right? I'm just getting to know Eric. And he was zombie. Like, I can tell you this. Like, this is the first time I've seen Eric with this prep this deep into it, and he is much more energetic than he was in 2011. In 2011, I asked his wife, I go, man, is he always like this? She's like, oh, no, he's usually pretty outgoing and out there. Like, he was zombie mode. But this guy would line up his unflavorful rice cakes
Just a
with
minor correction.
Microwave chicken.
Corn flakes. They were corn. They were corn thins, and this was 09. 09. I was much better in 2011.
He's got these corn cakes lined up on his coffee table. No plate. He's got like 8 or 9 of them lined up, and he's got microwave chicken chunks on them. And he's eating those like that. I'm like, there's no fucking flavor there. And then he takes the bowl from the microwave that he cooked the chicken in, and he drinks the chicken juice. That's how hungry he was. And he's like, it's so good. I'm like, this guy.
This is how I knew bodybuilders are for real. When Berto came to Toronto, and he said, we're filming content, and he's like, I'll show you a quick tip on how to cook chicken. I'm like, oh, what are we gonna do? George Foreman grill? Are we gonna oven bake it? What are we gonna do? Sear it up top with the pan? He's like, nah, we're just gonna microwave it. It's like, microwave it. He's like, yeah, we're going to microwave it, and then we're going to let the juices just marinate in it. And then after, I just saw it, and all the chicken after it's done. I thought to myself, this is clearly a prep activity where he said, the juice is good. I think he said something like, oh, no, the juice is good, too. There's no way I'm eating that, man.
Dude, I taught your boy that. You put it on 70% power. And it doesn't, because the problem is you get the rubbery and then the not cooked on the inside, so you get like rubber plus salmonella. But if you put it on like 70% power, rotate it and flip it, I've actually done it in the off season, and it's still. I don't drink the juice because I'm not starving. But back when I was still eating chicken.
That's disgusting.
Anyway, so yeah, it changes your palate. You do funny things with food.
I think Walden Farms, Eric, probably. I remember Matt August's videos from maybe 2010, 2011 when he was using Walden Farms. Probably experienced a surge in sales because it's 0 calories, still has some flavor to it. Yeah.
And it tastes terrible in the off season.
It's terrible, yeah.
Yeah, the only one that's good for the off season is the syrup. It's just a little watery.
So
but it tastes good, but it's watery.
They started making individual packets of Walden Farms. So I would carry those in my purse till 2014. For like 4 years, I would carry Walden Farms in my car because, again, I'm normal. I can go out to eat wherever I want. But let me go to my car real quick to get my dressing for all the salads that I would order. Yeah.
There's a couple dressings and a couple syrups that are worth using in the off season. This is the way to cut back on calories. Like, I think the pancake syrup makes the most sense.
Good.
Mm-hmm. The ranch is okay. The pancake syrup tastes just like syrup. It's just watery. And man, you lose so many calories when you're eating pancakes to syrup that I could see that. But yeah. Go ahead, Andrea.
I just remember the worst headache that I ever got was eating half a jar of the peanut spread at Helms's house.
Half a jar, though. Why?
Because it's no calories.
And I was trying to stay lean.
Did
I
you
was
shit everywhere?
calorie free, so I'm spreading it on rice cakes, right? And the headache that I had the next day was by far the worst. I get migraine headaches.
Well, I think you had like 4 grams of sodium in that meal. That's the problem. Farms, the sodium's pretty high in it, and if you just start guzzling and eating all that stuff, like your weigh-ins get wacky, it freaks you out even more. Then you start retaining water from the sodium and the cortisol, and then your blood pressure spikes and drops and everything. So like it can mess you up. Like I used to, my very first prep, every time I walk by the fridge, I'd take a swig of the Walden Farms chocolate syrup, which just, by the way, off season doesn't taste like chocolate at all.
It's good though.
No.
I've never had it in the off season, I guess.
Exactly.
That's the thing. That's the thing. You only have prep memories. Some of them are good in the off season.
Same with Arctic Zero. I used to eat the shit out of that.
Okay, Arctic Zero ice cream. Straight trash in the off season.
Oh, I can only speak as someone in the off season who's sampled this, like who's never competed. Arctic Zero's disgusting.
Yeah. Terrible.
So Halo Top, certain flavors of Halo Top are like a solid 7.5, 8 out of 10 just in the off season. During prep, they make Arctic Zero look like a 4 out of 10. And back in the day, I thought Arctic Zero was good during prep, but that stuff is not good
unless you're prepping. I don't have that option in prep as a female. It would be way too much of a waste for the Halo top.
The 320 calories.
Yeah. I need the 100.
That's big a meal, not like Arctic Zero is like 60 calories or whatever.
So my daily was if I was out in prep, it would be like I'd roll up to Sprouts and they have 6 packs of boiled eggs, and I would just eat the whites and then a thing of Arctic Zero on the side. That was like the best meal I could think of.
Just straight protein.
Yeah. But I think if y'all could talk about, you guys have athletes that eat food but spit it out.
No, that's Omar's. That was Omar's guy he was telling us about.
Jeff's had one though too. I feel like I know the name, but I'm not gonna say it. It was cookies.
I can't remember.
I'm with protein bars.
Brad's a smeller. Brad's a smeller, and I don't understand.
Hold on. I want to hear Omar tell us about your chewer, and then I want to hear the smeller.
No, I was gonna joke about someone. I know it's not like a public figure that you guys have coached. No, the chewer though is someone. Once again, I went to prior to the gym that I currently go to, Fortis Fitness. This other one was a gym where a lot of old school bodybuilders who now are in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, people that competed way back 30, 40 years ago, still went to the gym. It was kind of a mom and pop gym. Had some recreational clientele, but it was basically, I would describe it as a place where dreams go to die, where it is a tight-knit community of people who used to have their glory days that aren't currently doing the thing that they love, but are reminiscing about it maybe. And so there was an individual who, each trainer gets a trainer profile and describes what they do, their education, their credentials. And one of the trainers, it says very clearly up there that he won the Canada Cup, which is a very big, apparently a prestigious bodybuilding show. Cool. I've seen him around before, interacted a bit with him. He always wore a hoodie or a jacket, things where you couldn't quite see how big he was, but like he was in the zone. I remember he one time spoke to a client that wasn't motivated. A guy was like a banker or something, his client, and he just got down to eye level, like squatted down to the guy's eye level and said, "Do you want to fucking die?" Like meaning like how bad do you want this rep? So he was like that type of bodybuilder where he gave there's the Rocky speech like, "Come on Rocky, you can do it," and then there's 10 levels beyond that. He would give that speech 10 levels beyond that for one set of squats to one client. Like he's in it. So to set up this guy's obviously mental makeup, maybe you get now a picture. Anyways, I was just chatting with him one day. I was in between sets. I said, "Oh yeah, man, I saw you won the Canada Cup. That's pretty cool." And he said, "Oh yeah," he's like, "but a lot of people don't realize what it takes, And I'm like, "Nah, I don't know what you mean." And he said, "Well, let me give you a snapshot." Is what he said. He's like, "So one time, right? I'm prepping for the Canada Cup, and I have my calories, and I don't want to exceed my calories. So what I end up doing is I go to the burger joint that I love to eat, and first I just go around there and I start smelling it, like just getting a whip, like being in the same atmosphere, whatever. Then what he started doing was ordering the burger, eating the burger, putting it in his mouth, chewing the food, and then spitting it out. He's like, you see, it was like eating the burger, except I just didn't swallow it. Still got the taste bud." And he's like, "And that was my secret to winning the Canada Cup." And I said, "That sounds like an eating disorder. I gotta do a set, but I wish you the best." He had that. Now, when I said that once again, that Alberto and Eric changed my perception of individuals that I spoke to or those that I knew, is that it's far more balanced. Holistic would definitely be a word that I use. Lifestyle would be another one, where that's why when I joked and said it's where dreams go to die, this gym, is that the individuals that were there were not currently pursuing that passion. There actually was, which is super cool. There was an old school guy that competed in powerlifting back in the 60s, he would be 76 at the time, 75, still benching 2 plates, kind of doing his thing, just loving life, and he was committed. But a lot of these individuals, I think they didn't learn a lot of what you guys were saying, kind of, what did you use that term, Eric, about experience? A type of experience that basically is meaningful, then, where you learn something along the way, not just a carefree experience that you're not going to incorporate into your next show. These are individuals that maybe competed, had the lifestyle, but it was not holistic. So that's a snapshot into that one. Yeah.
Intentional experience.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, my man.
Thanks, Jeff, because I didn't even know what he was talking about. I forgot.
It's okay, he's in prep.
I just make this shit up anyway. I don't believe
It
it.
sounded great to me. I was like, wow, I bet there's
I'll be right back. I gotta go chew up a taco and spit it out. So.
I was smarter than Eric for 3 seconds. Oh man, that was awesome.
Brad's
I
a
got a
smeller?
crazy story.
Oh,
Brad,
we
Brad is
skipped
a
over
smeller.
that.
let Brad tell that story.
Or just
Well,
vape.
that was early in my bodybuilding career. I could smell food. In fact, I wanted to smell it. I would smell people's pizza and people's burgers. And
Did you
I
ask them
noticed-
first, or just shove
He
your
would
face
ask.
in there?
Hey,
Yeah,
can
he would
I
ask.
smell that?
How
No, Brad,
weird.
Brad's polite. Brad would be prepping. I'd be in the off season. I'd have a slice of pizza. He goes, Eric, can I smell that slice of pizza? And I'd look like that's really weird, but I'm not going to say no. And he'd just get a big old whiff and be like, all right, I'm good. And I'm like, and that would make everything worse for me. But
Probably the healthiest thing I
violate?
prep.
so, Brad, did it actually help, or was it just like you wanted it that bad?
No, I thought it helped. In my mind, it helped. It helped to like satiate me somewhat, smelling the food, because I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, I didn't necessarily need to eat it. I just wanted to smell it, and it somehow satiated me. I don't know. Don't ask me.
Well, I'll give you a funny one in my brain. When I'm in prep and someone else doesn't finish their meal, I have to stop myself from saying something, because I feel like it's this moral offense. Like, you left half your food and you could eat it all and you're not. Like, it just bothers me. So like when people don't finish their plates, I want to eat it just so that the food isn't wasted, but I don't want to eat it obviously because I'm prepping, and then I'm mad at them and resentful that they don't eat it but they could.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Food guarding Eric.
I don't know. It's weird.
Food guarding Eric.
So the weirdest thing I've had as a coach, though, and this was, I think, post-prep, if I recall correctly. I had a client who got very, very lean and was struggling with not eating everything in sight post-show. And I think he saw, was it like a box of donuts that was like half eaten that was in the trash? Same thing. Felt like it was like a moral offense that someone would throw away uneaten donuts, and went dumpster diving and ate the donuts out of the trash. And
He can afford donuts too.
yeah, definitely wasn't a cost issue. You know, the guy next to him wearing the plastic trash bag as a shirt was like, you don't need this lifestyle, I do. And he was like, you don't know my life. But so yeah, that's probably the funniest one, or the most out there one I've heard. And he's open about this, and he's come a long way since. Like, and still loving it, still kicking ass in the game. But it could push you to places.
Reveal things about yourself. It's like the room full of mirrors.
What are some of the crazy stuff you guys have seen as coaches?
Mine's not. Y'all totally beat mine, but you guys have been coaching for a lot more years. I don't feel
Yeah.
that's bad.
I'll tell you some ones that aren't funny. So sometimes athletes get very, very, very focused on scale weight. And I've had competitors who will delay their meals and delay their weigh-ins until it's a new low. And they tell me that, like, hey, so, I took a mild laxative this morning and weighed in at noon just because I knew I'd hit a new low. I think it was just a little constipated from yesterday or whatever. And the behavior just like slowly slides and gets worse. And eventually I'm like, all right, we're not weighing anymore. We need to use another metric. This is really getting in your head, just because they become so scale focused. Despite even sometimes knowing that the scale is not the goal, it's just a metric. I've had competitors who, to deal with that, they step on the scale, but they don't look, and their significant other writes it down. And then the significant other gives them the 7 weigh-in days on the reporting day, so they can't be negatively affected by each one of the experiences of weighing in, either high or low. And they only just see the 7 ones they send away to me.
That's not a bad idea. That strategy, I feel, is not that harmful to the individual.
No, the necessity for it is an indication that there could be a negative relationship with the scale, but the solution is not something that is bad, like taking laxatives when you wake up first thing in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is hard to poop in prep though, Omar. It's very difficult.
One time, Andrea, I did a ketogenic diet for 12 weeks. Was not fun. Would not recommend.
Good to know.
Thought I just was done. Going to the bathroom and doing the number 2. I thought it was just done for me. I've adapted. I don't know.
I'm just gonna hang out here for a few years.
Yeah, I'm just gonna gain some mass. I'm gonna be like John Wayne, die with 35 pounds of just meat apparently in my stomach, which is impossible. But
Well, and they're like little rabbit poops when they do happen.
Yeah. And you squeeze really hard to get them out because you've had like so much atrophy in your gut. Because you think about it, like your intestines are muscles. Like peristalsis is contraction, and you give it less stuff to push around. I think you actually lose a fair amount of like intestinal muscle mass, and you're just like, ugh, and it's like bink. And it's like I worked way too hard for that just to be a little bink,
Well, I want to see that didn't happen to me. I don't think. Do you have athletes that get hemorrhoids then?
I haven't. No.
I don't know if they would tell y'all.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody tell me that.
Do you ever have clients, not to break the client-coach relationship, but just share too much in an effort to give you the complete picture of their prep, and you're like, I don't need to know that. I don't need to know this stuff.
I don't think there's anything we don't need to know.
Okay.
It affects you in so many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had to set expectations and boundaries just to more like control the workflow or get them to focus on the right things. But just to put in perspective, like I want to know about their relationships. I want to know about their menstrual cycle. I want to know about their energy levels. I want to know how they interact at work. I want to know, bowel movements. Like, so a lot of things that you wouldn't think come into play actually do,
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, you'll see things on a spreadsheet, like, oh, everything looks great on a spreadsheet, but then when you actually hear some of the information that's coming in from the athletes pertaining to all these different things, you're like, oh, okay, we need to actually do this according to what they're actually experiencing versus like, okay, it looks great on the spreadsheet, but that might not be the right way or the right tools to be looking at right now with this check-in anyway.
Well, and Eric, when you brought up setting boundaries, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this actually happened to you, but I have had female athletes who they have such good confidence, I guess, in their body, and they're just like, you know what, I don't have any boobs anyway right now. Is it okay if I just send you my check-in photos topless, and I'll be as politically correct, I guess, as I can, say, you know what, I've got a 15, 16-year-old son right here kind of in the center of the house. I think it would probably be best if you do send me your check-in photos, in your posing suit or appropriately clothed. But Eric, did you have a client?
I had one athlete who was basically like, and I legitimately, like, if it had been any other situation, or if I was a personal trainer and someone sends you nudes, you think like, okay, this client they're trying to make a move on me. But it just wasn't like that. I think sex was the last thing on their mind. I think it was like, I don't want to have to go get my posing suit. It's a pain in the ass to put on because it's not just a bikini. It's like a one-piece strappy thing. And you know what? I'm just going to send you my posing shots of my underwear. Like, sex it's somewhere not on my radar. I don't want to deal with it. I'm tired. It's a big piece suit, and you can see my physique better. And I had to be like, I know that all sounds logical to you right now in prep world, but I'm going to open this at AUT as a client check-in, like, because I'm a sports scientist, and I have a wife, and like I felt bad asking her to put clothes on for the check-in, and then I thought I shouldn't feel bad for that. But yeah, that has happened once to me, and I think more than once to you, Brad, right?
Well, it's never happened to me, but I have been asked. It's a pain to put my suit on. I don't have boobs anyway. I really don't have anything to hide. Can I just send you my check-in photos nude? And yeah, I mean, I have to, kind of play the non-dude and not say, oh yeah, sure,
Oh my God.
and kind of set those boundaries and say, yeah, you know what, I do have a 15, 16-year-old son who, is constantly walking by my computer here, I don't feel comfortable,
So Omar is launching his coaching service next week.
Yeah, guys only though. If you want anyone that wants check-ins, we have a supportive environment, non-judgmental. And also it's you're not even prepping for a show. We're just more about body positivity. You send in the condition you're in, and I tell you look great. You send in the photo. Wow, man, keep it up.
On that same vibe, just to talk about some of the absurdity of prep and what it involves. So when we talk about the sock during prep, that means something. Yes. And this is not a story. This is just the way it's been done. So like we used to use, it's banned in most shows now as a color agent, Dream Tan. Like the most places you can't use it, but it's this oil based because it never dries. It's called Dream Tan. It has little flecks of either gold or bronze in it. So it has like oil built in. It gives you a sheen. It looks metallic. If you look at a lot of the WNBF world competitors from the mid to late 2000s, or a lot of the European competitors and overseas IFBB shows, they all wear it, and they kind of look like bronze statues. And then more in the States, you'll see kind of the typical Pro Tan or Jantana look that's a little more matte. But anyway, that bronzy look comes from what's called Dream Tan. And the thing is, it never dries, so not fully at least. So when you put it on, you kind of have to like cover up certain parts, stand on a towel. So the common procedure we'd have would be in my kitchen. We'd lay out this sheet that we had that had all these brown, bronzy stains on it. And then we would just put a sock over your junk. Right. And then we would all wear like gloves and then slap it in. Because we believe that if you slapped it in, it would stay a little deeper and get into the skin a little better. Like you do a little circle and then slap it. So we're sitting there on our knees with a man wearing only a sock facing the other way, asking him to flex his glutes so it doesn't compress against your hand, slapping a man's butt, putting Dream Tan into it. And this was a normal thing every show, multiple times per year from like 2009 all the way through 2012 that would occur in my kitchen. That's just
Eric's prep shop. Can I just say thank God for Andrea joining you guys and just been like, I'm going to take a look at the system processes of what you guys do when it comes to everything. And we don't need this one anymore.
I've been bodybuilding longer than these guys been alive, and when I walked in there and saw that, I was like, "What the f is this?"
Just like I just want to.
I was like, "What the hell?"
I just want to say these young pups. I don't know what y'all are doing.
And then the next day, I was like, "Hey Jeff, can we come on your website and be on your website?" Yeah, guys, come on.
The best part of that story, though, and I wish Berto was here to tell it, because the way he demonstrates it is just so classic, as he's patting the Dream Tan on the inside of Eric's thigh without even thinking nor hesitating. He's like, I just got to get this out of the way. And then
we get so focused.
Well,
yeah, so he just, without even thinking about it, just moved my junk, and I was like, I can do that, bro. Like, I got it.
There's also a certain level of leanness where y'all can see each other's butthole too. Y'all have talked to me about.
Oh yes.
Over.
I've termed this cat butt before, because when you see a cat walk into a room,
right,
butthole is always right there, or dog, depending on what kind of animal you love. And depending on the attachments of the lower glutes and the development of the glutes and how lean you get, if you flex your glutes just standing there, you can sometimes see this on a human without them actually bending over, and that is called cat butt. And you're in good shape when you've got cat butt.
When your butt cheeks don't touch.
Yep. When you
I've never been in good shape, Omar.
I think it has
just
more.
Just for the record, once again.
It has more.
Just I don't know these guys.
It has more to do with the attachments, I think, than anything else. But it is. It's like a resting state of just. It's like either thigh gap. That's nothing compared to when you have like butt cheek gap to the point where you can just see straight to the sphincter of a man.
Out of curiosity, do you guys think more or less people after this episode are going to want to do bodybuilding?
I was just going to say that.
I think we should, to change it to the last topic, I think we should honestly, for the listeners of Iron Culture, extol some of the virtues, the positives of bodybuilding. When you said, Andrea, it is your favorite thing to do. Eric, like you pursued a PhD, you've done so many things. You've launched businesses now, but you've come back to competing in bodybuilding. For all of you guys, maybe we'll do just clockwise, starting with Andrea, the positives of bodybuilding, what you've taken away from it, because this is fun for the 3DMJ listeners. This is fun where a lot of people can relate. I would assume to different aspects. Like right. Maybe to people that are outside listening to this, like, wow, those are a lot of, not drawbacks, but those are some very intense experiences. Let's talk about some of the positives.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things ever because it's the first sport that I had done and treated as a lifestyle, which, depending on who you talk to, if you're a high-level athlete at anything, it is full lifestyle or whatever. But I grew up, like I was saying, gymnastics, cheer, basketball, track. Like I did all these things and practice was practice, but outside of it, I didn't think about it. And bodybuilding was like this whole new world of learning about myself. I didn't know shit about nutrition before, but there's something really empowering about when I learn I can change the way that I look to the outside world. And that was really cool to me. I feel like I have a sense of control over myself and my body that I never had before. And again, it was because I have a little bit of an obsessive personality, which I think we all kind of do it sometimes to be in this sport. It let me go all the way into that and have an excuse to do it. And I was like in hog heaven. Like this, it made it okay for me to fully give into that side of my personality. And I learned a lot about myself. It taught me how to be alone. Like I was saying before, I was a really social person, and I think I still am and have pieces of that. But when you make food by yourself, get up to do cardio by yourself, go training by yourself, you think nobody understands you, all the things that sound bad socially, was the first time that I ever really took time for myself and to be in my own head and spend hours a day thinking, reading, planning my next meals or whatever. But I just learned so much about myself, and there's something that you go through in being, doing that to yourself, as harmful as it is, knowing that you can, like we are talking about with Jeff, it's empowering. It's, lessons that never go away. I haven't competed in 5-6 years, but I wouldn't be who I am today having not gone through that. So I'm forever grateful to have found the sport. I'll stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I at this point, I think about bodybuilding as a vehicle. Like when I first got in the car, when I was 14 years old, it was like learning how to gain confidence in myself because it was empowering that way. Like, oh, I could get big and strong. My peers are kind of looking at me like, oh, this he's cool. So it's like gain some confidence with that. And then it kind of transitioned to, okay, now I'm going after this goal of trying to win bodybuilding shows. So it gave me purpose. It's like towards goal setting and things like that. And then, as I learned a little more along the way, it's like I learned, okay, that was kind of an obsessive way of looking at bodybuilding early in my 20s. So I was like, okay, let me transition to this. Let's just have fun with it. And having an open mind, like, okay, let me prep for fun and meet people, meet friends. It led me to these guys, to 3D Muscle Journey. And then from there, it's like, okay, now I'm a coach. Now I can take all the experiences I've gone through and actually help people avoid the same things that I've gone through. So it's just, for me, it's been a vehicle that's helped me as a person. It's helped me to basically become a better father, better husband now, like going through all those experiences. And I'm just like, now that I'm prepping in my, I don't even know how many seasons this is now, but now, in my late 40s, it's not about any of that stuff anymore. It's not about winning or any of that. It's just like, I just love the process. Like I love to train. I love to try to, change my body. And I love to use the prep or use bodybuilding as a teaching tool to help others who are basically along the same ride. And I just think it's helped to build like relationships too. Like I've met a lot of people through it, a lot of friends. And I think with anything, like any other thing we do in life, we have purpose. It's just one of my purposes. So that's kind of like bodybuilding for me. So I don't regret any of like the horror stories that we've talked about. because like Andrea said, it helped to shape and mold who I am now. So for me, I'm like forever, grateful that I've actually, taken the journey that I've taken.
I can totally see that. Brad?
When I first got into bodybuilding, again, it was for the love. And I remember for the young people out there in the 1970s, there was this really cool movie that Sylvester Stallone wrote and starred in called Rocky. And I watched Rocky probably at least 14, maybe 15,000 times. And I wanted to go there. I wanted to live that life. I wanted to train like that. And unfortunately, I wasn't outgoing enough as a youth in high school to go out for sports and things like that. But as I got older, I still had that love. And when I had the opportunity, to learn about bodybuilding and see some of my early mentors and coaches, did it, I was just all in. I was like ready to live that life. And I'm lucky enough in that pretty much my entire bodybuilding career, my son has been alive. And so he's seen all of this. He's seen the good, he's seen the bad, and all of that desire and that discipline, I think, kind of rubbed off on him a little bit. And he's taken the positive from it, and so now without even, don't get me wrong, I do coach him up, and I do my fatherly duties, but I almost feel like I almost didn't have to, because it's given him the confidence to try anything that he wants to do. Because that's always been my approach ever since I got into bodybuilding, was to try your hardest, leave nothing to chance. And I'll never forget when Xander was probably about maybe 10 years old. He loved to play football. Big, strong kid, not very fast, not very athletic. And he wanted to try out for kicker. And I remember doing this. I'm hiding my face. Oh, my God, son, don't try out for kicker. Please don't try out for kicker. And there's coming up to line there, and he's about probably fourth or fifth, in line. And I'm like, son, what are you doing? You can't kick. Get out of that line, And I'll never forget it to this day. He just looked at me and he shrugged and he put his hands in the air and he goes, well, Dad, what's wrong with not trying? And I felt as big as an ant. I literally felt like dirt. But I feel like he got that attitude. He got that lesson from watching me do all the impossible crap that I used to do as I was prepping for bodybuilding. And I think that's the big lesson for him, is that not only has it empowered me to not leave anything a chance, to give everything you've got, do the crazy stuff that we do, but I think it's kind of taught him in the best of all ways.
Amazing.
Do I have to go now after?
No, yeah, just to follow up that.
Yeah. My great pecs. No. So first, I want to say the obvious one to me is the fact that I'm sitting here talking to everyone on this call. Like, I've met some of the most important people in my life that I wouldn't have otherwise met if I hadn't gotten into this crazy sport, which I think is really, really cool. It brings people together through this unified thing that I think is expressed in all corners of the world in different ways, of course. But so that's one aspect of it. But for me, I have artistic streaks, and I think I have athletic streaks, and I also have analytical streaks. And bodybuilding has all those elements wrapped up into one, and it's really allowed me to, I think, express myself. From being super detail oriented in my planning and prep, to then being able to kind of freestyle a semi breakdance kind of pop locking routine on stage. So there's that element of it that kind of keeps me here. But what really hooked me was, like Jeff said, it being a vehicle for self betterment and learning just how far I can take myself, and going from being Vince Vaughn in Dodgeball, who would set low standards to feel like he succeeded, to setting goals that I didn't know if I could reach, but believing that I could and succeeding, and then realizing that those goals weren't even lofty enough, that I had much more capability than I knew. And I feel such a strong sense of gratitude in my life that I found bodybuilding and did it in such a way that was beneficial, from the influence of folks like Jeff and Berto and Brad and now Andrea. I have such a strong sense of gratitude because I don't think I would have a doctorate. I don't think I'd have the ability to reach out and try to help others. I think I would be making a lesser impact in the world, all because of, the smell of Dream Tan and way too small of shorts, which I find is hilariously absurd. So it's funny. You get to laugh about it. And I think it's also been a really huge tool for self-empowerment and growth for me. And I think we don't have as many rituals as we used to in modern times. And each prep to me is what I imagine some kind of rite of passage would feel like. And I enjoy that process as hard as it is, because I know that I'll be something better on the other side of it.
Wow. Some great answers. All right, I'm back in, guys.
2020 is his year.
That's it.
According to Coach, he said, I'm about, 4 weeks and 4 years out from being ready to start a diet.
Correct. Okay. You're about four years out from being ready to start a 1 year prep.
So you're planning early, and that's what we recommend.
That's what I was. That's the takeaway that I heard. Yeah.
Yep.
And your coach got your sock ready to go.
Yep.
Oh yeah. As soon as I heard the Dream Tan story, I'm like, okay, I'm back in, guys.
that was the thing.
Yeah. Jeff was like, I just want to say that wasn't me, Omar. I'm like, no, but yeah, I'm interested, guys.
But I want it to be me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I think you're the common factor between the 3DMJ and Iron Culture podcast, so I think it's probably appropriate.
I'll do it.
You close it out.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the 3D Iron Culture podcast. This has been the only episode of that podcast that doesn't exist, but also one episode of both of the podcasts that do exist. Iron Culture, which comes out every Monday. Check us out. And of course, the 3DMJ podcast, which has been around a while, and we go through seasons, and we are currently on an every other week per season, totally normal and known schedule. Mm-hmm. And make sure you tune into both. And thank you very much for following along.
Hey, everybody. It's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.